All right, what's up guys? We're back with another video, another reaction. Why SteamOS beats Windows for gaming. Nick Flip. Comment, like, share, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Socials are in the description.
Now look,
Let's
Windows
get into
has
it.
been the king of PC gaming for decades, but things are about to change.
Ever.
Microsoft recently has made a great effort to try to get major control over everyone's data. On top of that, just AI everywhere you go. It seems like Microsoft forgot why people like computers. However, despite the storm going on, exists an OS that the majority of people love, SteamOS. Linux has made strides in recent years. And in this video, I'm gonna break down why SteamOS itself just destroys Windows at gaming especially. And
it just works, man. And I'm using SteamOS right now.
Windows doesn't. I'll get into that, so stay tuned. Listen, I'll be fair to Windows.
Quick resume,
Windows
probably.
works with the majority of apps you want to use, especially for productivity and some creative work like video editing and stuff like that. And the thing with gaming on Windows is that you won't run into any games that don't work because of a lack of anti-cheat or something like that.
No compatibility
and most
issues.
Of them just install and run perfectly fine, assuming they're not super old. And with most peripherals, they're all pretty much going to work plug and play with Windows as well. Hoping those drivers even exist isn't really a thing also on Windows. That's what most drivers are made for. Another thing is if you have an NVIDIA GPU, you can't even use Linux really that great. However, on Windows, that's not the case. Works across the board. So Windows with compatibility and just across the board support for everything, it's just an overall better device for that. Now, on to why Windows is just bad. I think you know by now, but Windows updates. Listen, Windows updates far and wide ever since the beginning of Windows have been the bane of everybody's existence, with forced updates happening at random points while you're working, some updates just breaking drivers you have, other updates breaking your computer. And look, as many times as Microsoft promises us a security fix, we really don't know deep down below if it's gonna kill our computer in the process. Not only that, but Windows is set up to be so optimized in an awful way. Power management on Windows is weird. Windows on handhelds isn't that great of an experience as well, and it's kind of clunky still. Windows sometimes for
I've heard people say that the sleep mode actually works on the Xbox Ally, even as far back as the ROG Ally X. Or no, even the ROG Ally, the regular one. Like they put it in sleep. They put it in sleep for 12 hours. I saw this on Reddit, by the way. They put it in sleep mode for 10 hours, 12 hours, and it only lost 3%. So 6% a day. That's not bad for an x86 chip. The Steam Deck actually drains more than that in sleep. And the Steam Deck actually has like a proper sleep function, but I don't know. Let me pull it up on Google. Xbox Ally X sleep mode Reddit. Yeah, here it is. This is the exact post. They put it in sleep. 12 hours of sleep mode equal 3% battery. Not 3% left. 3%. 755. And they put the screenshots to prove. Nobody's gonna manually edit the time. No, but nobody has time for that. All right, Thursday, 23rd of October. They didn't put the time here. But yeah, I believe them. I definitely do. Then again, it has a bigger battery, and they did make some optimizations to the ROG Ally X actually has a better power. It has better power management, even though it has the exact same chip, because they improved the cooling and all of that, on top of doubling the battery size from the regular ROG Ally. And then the Z2 Extreme Ally, which is this one, the Xbox Ally X, that's even more power efficient. So the gains are pretty good. I've been rambling for a minute now. Let's get back to this. So that's W Windows. Sleep mode is my biggest issue with Windows. I'm sure they'll continue to refine the Xbox full screen experience over time.
And wants to let you know that you need permission to delete something, which I still think is crazy. I own my own computer. Let me delete something on the root drive. And on top of this, Microsoft's recent push of AI and Copilot and all this other stuff, which really started with Cortana back in the day, if you remember that, it hasn't been a great time. And it seems like
yes, I do remember
the stocks rather than they are the actual consumers buying their Licenses, which is another thing. Windows licenses literally drive the price up for pre-builts and stuff like that because these pre-built manufacturers literally have to purchase these licenses to put in the computers, which are hundreds of dollars. Now, this is where we start to talk about SteamOS. When SteamOS first made its appearance way back in the day in 2015, if you remember the original Steam machines, it wasn't all that there yet. In fact, compatibility was solely reliant on native Linux builds, which, let me tell you, few and far between. They did not exist, and we only had so many games we could play on the original Steam machines. However, when they came out with the Steam Deck LCD, the original first model, a revised SteamOS with Proton support, which is a compatibility layer that helps Windows games run, SteamOS quickly gained a really fast following for its ease of use, customizability, and just overall respect for the consumer. Before, the main reason people wouldn't use Linux and SteamOS as a result was because you couldn't play a lot of games on it. When Valve launched Proton, this allowed pretty much almost every single game to be played, not including the ones like I mentioned earlier that use anti-cheat and need more access to the kernel. Honestly, when you're using SteamOS nowadays, you forget that you're using Linux. It really is nowadays as simple as clicking install on a supported game on SteamOS, clicking play, and being right in the game. In fact, it's gotten so easy that it's often quicker than launching a game through Windows nowadays. And SteamOS has really turned PC
which is crazy. Its own OS, and it's easier on SteamOS.
Now, we already know how weird Windows is with just not working half the time. SteamOS threw all of this out the back door and said, you know what, we'll just do the basics to keep you up and running, and then you get to choose everything else. This starts with updates. SteamOS updates nowadays are pretty much meant to help Steam Deck capability because that's what's mainly running SteamOS. None of them are pushing features we don't need, like AI and weird security fixes. It doesn't need to push these because it doesn't have the issues Windows has with a vast amount of malware out there that's targeted for the Windows platform. Yes, there is viruses and malware on Linux, but very few and far between. Not only are updates reliable and efficient, but input. With Bluetooth baked into Steam.
And as he mentions updates, with the other handhelds, you have to be updating everything. You have to go to Windows Update, and then you have to go to Armory Crate, and then you have to go to update drivers, and then BIOS updates. That's just how it goes with Windows. It's not a nuisance to me because it doesn't take long. But you do have to do that. As opposed to SteamOS, just go to System here, click Update, and it'll install. I mean, when you go into desktop mode, there will be things to update in the Discover store, but it's just those two places. That's it. And you won't ever really need to go there unless you want to set up things separate from Steam games. If you just play Steam games and nothing else, you don't need to go to the desktop. You don't.
For that matter, it's really very much plug and play. It's actually a lot more plug and play than Windows. And I have a very specific example. Now, for a lot of you who use AirPods with Windows or have attempted to, there is this common error where Windows will shut them off to conserve power. And it took me hours to figure out. I literally did none of this with SteamOS. All I did was sync my AirPods with Bluetooth, connect to them, and they work perfectly. To add insult to injury, there are add-ons you can get through Decky, which if you don't know, is a third-party installer on SteamOS that lets you get plugins.
Magic Pods. Yeah, I have the add-on.
There's a plugin called Magic Pods.
Plugin, I mean, not add-on.
Lets you change the noise cancellation features
there it is.
in the AirPods itself. You can enable all this from the Steam Deck. Now on to power. SteamOS lets you literally manage everything out the box. You can change your TDP, stuff that you would need to directly go into the BIOS on Windows to do for the most part, or through third-party software, basically like the MSI software, Dragon Center. I think that's what it's called nowadays. I digress. You don't need any third-party software. It's baked into SteamOS itself. And battery management. Now, we can't say for every single device using SteamOS that the battery is great. Some devices have different battery wattages and different overall specs. However, if we're going off the Steam Deck alone, Linux just uses different
Hold up. Battery benchmarks. Z1 Extreme. Z1 Extreme. Z1 Extreme. You can go. Wait, how does this have better battery than this? Lenovo Legion Go. Oh, power saving mode. Okay. So Xbox, no Xbox Ally X.
overall specs. However, if we're going off the Steam Deck alone, Linux just uses less power, and you can tune the settings so if you're out and about and you don't have a charger nearby, you can lower the frame rate cap of the display or lower the TDP of the CPU to basically give you more longevity. Now, the ecosystem with SteamOS is another big thing. If you're on the Steam Deck, you'll have a whole list of verified games that work perfectly out the box and playable games. These are games Valve has gone and vetted to make sure that they work great. And because of this, a lot of developers making games that are publishing to Steam nowadays are actually testing on the Steam Deck and SteamOS itself to make sure their games run on Linux through Proton. While Windows is obviously the main goal, Proton has made it so that if you develop games for Windows, they may automatically work on SteamOS without any extra work on your end. So the ecosystem on SteamOS is very healthy. If you look at all the verified games, we're over 20,000 games on Steam that are either verified or playable, and it's growing day by day. There are new games coming out day one that work great, and Valve sometimes pushes out updates to SteamOS if a game doesn't work right, and they'll fix specific issues for those titles. All stuff that's just benefiting the consumer. Another thing is future-proofing. Now, we're seeing with the Steam Frame that Valve has made Linux compatible with ARM. ARM support through FEX like Proton, basically it's a translation layer. Apparently it works great, which is good because with the long term, we're seeing a rise in ARM CPUs nowadays for their power efficiency and overall performance. And it means that future devices that use ARM chips will work perfectly with SteamOS, or that's the goal at least. Microsoft does have this as well with some of their Copilot Plus PCs, but just goes to show that Linux is right behind them. And the longevity, I feel like it's really important to talk about this. Windows, with every new update, is becoming harder and harder to run on older systems. In fact, there's a ton of videos if you just go on YouTube, you can look back to people resurrecting old laptops with SteamOS or Bazzite on them. Because of how light Linux operates, you can run it on a lot of older machines. Why this matters long term is so important. Linux is freedom. Windows is control. And we're starting to see this day by day. And I think a reduced reliance on Microsoft would be really healthy. It means the freedom to run the games you want your way and use the software you want. And on top of that, it's free. Linux is an open source OS that has tons of forks and distributions. We've never had to pay for licenses. And with the way Microsoft's going with AI features, ads in the search bar, and just this overall disrespect for the consumer, I think it's really important.
I saw in another video, somebody called it micro slop. Kind of like how you'd say AI slop. So it would be like Microsoft slop, and then you just merge that into one word and call it micro slop. So yeah, that's my input on that.
Shoot for the stars with Linux. As of the release date of this video, Windows is still the overall OS that just is pretty much compatible with most things, especially if you do a lot of creative work like video editing, Photoshop, music production. It's always going to be the place to go. I'd actually say music production is a little better on Mac. But for gamers and honestly basic PC users that are doing web browsing or media consumption, I think SteamOS is the best operating system right now. I made a short last week, and basically I showed that I use the Steam Deck as a media machine, not just for gaming. I dock it and I watch movies and YouTube, and it's all so seamless. It took a little bit of setup to get right, but it was nothing crazy that is super hard to learn. Before the Steam Deck came,
I used mine to do the same. Well, I did one Saturday. It was Waydroid. I just installed the YouTube app in Waydroid and then connected it like that.
Came out, I have never touched Linux. It's my first time using this kind of software, and I have done so much with it. And this just goes to show that SteamOS means freedom, control, and sustainability, which is the one reason over Microsoft and Windows that I think SteamOS absolutely crushes it. And if you're thinking about jumping ship from Windows 10 and you don't want to go to Windows 11, I honestly think getting Bazzite or a build of SteamOS on your machine, if it can run it, is a great idea.
I wonder what the difference between Bazzite and SteamOS is.
Would you switch to SteamOS? I want to know down below. Thank you all so much for watching again. This has been Nick, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.
Why the Steam Deck still beats a Switch 2? You know, maybe I'll watch that at some point. Alright guys, that was my reaction to why SteamOS beats Windows for gaming. Not that I needed him to tell me, I already knew, but it's still great to hear it every now and then. So yeah, that was that reaction to that video. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Goodbye.